When did a feeling of, we need to get out of here immediately, save you? Walking through the local woods in Ireland during winter, so it was dark and very cold. I see a guy in a t-shirt and shorts sitting alone in this little stone hut thing. I think it might be used for changing after swimming in the pond. Something about it really freaked me out, so I turned around and ran back to my car. I asked for a guard to go out and do a check to see if he's okay, but the man had moved somewhere in the woods. I hear a week later that a woman walking her dog had been raped the same night. I was getting a beer with a friend and he brought along his friend. When we left, I felt very drunk despite only having 2 drinks. They wanted me to come to their hotel as they were getting ready to go to a concert that night, but I made the excuse that I needed to get home because I think I left my oven on. My beer was 100% tampered with. My vision felt like I was in a tunnel. I got home in an Uber and immediately threw up and continued to do so for the rest of the night. Not my feeling, but whatever. It was at the Goose Fair in Nottingham in the early 2000s. I was there taking pictures for my art course, and my boyfriend at the time fancied himself as a bit of a hard man. Liked to make out as he was trained or whatever. Anyway, after about 20 minutes, he made me leave. Said that shit was about to go down. Huge eye roll. Whatever, dude. Okay, we'll leave. I see in the news the next day that a 14-year-old girl was shot dead there not long after we left. I was riding my bike during a huge storm when I was 10. There was this huge, recently built brick concrete wall right beside the sidewalk where I was using as a racetrack. I was having a good time and suddenly I felt that, get the fuck out of here, which I did. The next morning, as I passed by the place I was playing previously, the entire wall had collapsed. I made a somewhat late night trip to a convenience store that I knew carried wine. I used to work really odd hours, and sometimes late at night I'd finish my work and want to have a few drinks. As I was getting back to my truck, this young girl asked if I could give her a ride a few blocks back to her home. It was probably a bad idea to judge a book by its cover, but she was pretty young and dressed decently. Didn't act too weird or anything, so I figured, okay. Well, I'm headed back and we get into a pretty rough part of town, and she says turn left up here. Very dark street. Whatever. I stop and she says she really appreciated the ride and wanted to do something for me. Asked if she could give me a BJ and started getting sketched out. Like, she needs to get out now. She gets out and closes the door, and as I drive away, 2 men dressed in dark clothes were just stepping towards the street and stared at me as I drove past. Pretty sure that I would have ended up with a gun in my face. That's what you get for being nice sometimes. Up in the woods, about 2 a.m., having a very large bonfire midwinter. There were probably 7 or 8 feet of snow where it wasn't packed, and my friend and I were the only 2 sober. After about 45 minutes, we both looked at each other at the same time and went, something is wrong. Neither of us could quite explain it because we hadn't seen anything, but we knew there were animals in the woods. Grizzlies, wolves, and bobcats are all known to be there, but generally leave larger groups and fires alone. We managed to convince the roughly 15 drunk guys to head back to the trucks a mile away as a group, knowing at least the sober friend had a gun on her and could use it. We got everyone into vehicles and everyone shipped back to town eventually. When the guys who didn't believe us went back out in the morning to check that everything was cleaned up and found the tracks of a pack of wolves that had been circling the clearing. Not me, but my mother. She was on a business trip taking a taxi from the airport, and she noticed the driver wasn't taking the route usually taken, as she had done this multiple times before. She asked him first out of curiosity. Perhaps there was a road closure or something. The guy simply mumbled something and mostly ignored her. Then it became more apparent that they weren't headed towards the hotel, and instead away from the center of the city. She got more and more aggressive, eventually demanding he stopped. As he kept ignoring and mumbling something, finally she got loud enough and threatening enough that he did pull over and she got out. She had a cell phone, but smartphones weren't a thing yet. She was able to call a taxi service and get someone else to pick her up. And sure enough, they were headed nowhere near her hotel. Now maybe this guy was hoping he could take an ignorant tourist on a joyride and rack up some high fare. but it sure has a feeling of something far more malicious in the making. We were hiking and geocaching up in northern Michigan, where it's pretty rednecky in spots. We were at a designated trail with a small parking lot off on some weird side road, but we decided to check it out anyway. About 5 minutes into the trail, we noticed a game camera, but there was no ID on it. Game cameras on public land need to have ID info, and we thought that was really strange. We kept walking a bit, but I just didn't feel right about the cameras or walking on this trail, so we turned around and went back to the truck instead of walking the last mile of the trail. When we got to the truck, this beater pulls up with a couple in it. The guy was just a regular redneck, but the girl in his passenger seat 100% had the nods and was struggling to keep her head up. He looked surprised when we walked out of the trail, and they sat in the lot for a second and then left. Pretty sure they weren't looking to go for a hike. My guess is that was their camera, and they get the notification when people are on the trails so they can break into their cars. It happened to us on a family trip in Kentucky years ago, so maybe I'm just a little suspicious. But we decided no more backwoods hidden nature trails for us. I was at a house party in high school, and things were getting very rowdy. Tons of people just trashing the place, and I just had a bad feeling. Told my friends we should leave, but none of them would listen. I remember going out of my car, and as soon as I got in, the cops pulled up. I ducked down and waited for them to get up to the door and just drove off without them even noticing. Several of my friends spent the night in jail or hiding in the woods that night. I slept in my comfortable bed. In high school, at a very shady friend's house, playing cards in the kitchen, one of the house residents comes running through and out of the back door holding several illegal items. He's followed by the two roommates also carrying evidence. With them, two cops hot on their heels. The cops chase the roommates out of the back door, but one cop stops briefly and tells us all at the table, "Don't move," before heading out the back door. We're all stunned and look around for a couple seconds before all four of us, without a word being spoken, jump up and run out the front door to a neighbor's, where we lay low for like 3 hours until all the noise passes. What just seemed like a bad storm had started. My ex then decided to play with the dog out in the backyard in the rain. I got a weird feeling about how strong the winds were, and despite being called crazy, I told my ex she and the dog needed to go down into the basement for shelter with me. Within 15 minutes, half my roof was gone. Apparently, the storm was derecho, which I'd not even heard of before that. Hey, was this like 10 years ago by chance? We had a line of storms come through Ohio and much of the Midwest that caused several tornadoes, and it moved so fast that they were calling it a land hurricane for a while. The storm line moved at like 80 miles per hour across the entire state with high winds and very strong storms. I'll never forget it because I got caught in it trying to drive to work and thought I was going to die. Tornado sirens were going off. Rain was coming down so hard I couldn't see out of my windows. Wind was pushing the car. The radio was announcing a tornado warning for that county as I was passing by that county sign by the side of the road. Me and some friends were in downtown Vancouver watching Game 7, Stanley Cup Finals, at a pub. Vancouver lost and things on the street got a bit rowdy. My friend wanted to stay and wait for things to calm down, but I just had a bad feeling and said we should hop on the next bus to Kitsilano. On the way over the bridge, I looked back and saw trails of smoke from burning cars coming from the city. A huge riot ensued, and it was absolute anarchy all night. They shut down transit shortly after we arrived home. It was on my first solo road trip to the US when I was around 34. Male, straight. Stayed in a fairly remote Texan campsite and decided to go for a little trek. End up hitting a parking bay. It's about 4 to 5 p.m., nobody else around. Then some guy in his mid-40s rolls up in a van, starts talking. All seemed normal enough until he asks if I want to go for a ride and to smoke with him. Politely declined. Then he said a bug went down my top. Without realizing, I lifted it, and then he commented on having nice chest hair. Said I need to get back to my group and started walking in the opposite direction. Dude then starts reversing and getting a bit aggressive and insisting we go for a ride. I just got straight back to the trail and started running. No idea if he was just some strange friendly guy, a potential thief, rapist, serial killer, or if I accidentally stumbled into a meetup place for gay men. Glad I didn't stick around to find out anyway. Around 1 a.m., smoking weed with two friends under a small bridge behind some pillars, with no houses around us for like 50 meters. Saw a group of guys talking to each other around 30 meters away from us. They split up and one part of the group circled behind us. Told my friends we had to fuck off right away, started running. Looked behind us and saw two groups come racing on their bicycles and stop at the pillars. Can never be sure what would have, but doubt they were gonna ask for a smoke. Me and a buddy were hanging out with these two girls we met at a bar. They invite us back to their place where we meet up with a bunch of more people. As the night goes on, the party winds down and a few people leave. Then one of the girls starts talking about having an orgy. And all of a sudden, the other girl is like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Even in my drunken state, I still had the wherewithal to look around and count. At this point in the night, there's 9 guys, including myself, and 2 women. No matter how you divide that up, that's just too many dicks. I decided it was time to go, but my buddy Tim was like, nah man, I'm gonna see how this goes. Tim essentially got excluded from the orgy and got to watch a bunch of dudes jerking off while these 2 chicks went back and forth giving them sloppy, drunk blowjobs until he also left. Lived in a rough place and have been robbed many times before. Usually a bunch of guys asking for spare change, then threatening for your wallet. Anyways, I came out of a club at 2 a.m. or later and I am waiting for a bus in a deserted area with a friend. See a bunch of dodgy looking guys, you could tell we're up to no good. I instantly get the feeling, but rather than run and have them chase me, I walk straight to them with a bit of a crazed look and asked them for spare change. When they said no, I insisted. They left us alone. I'm not a big guy or threatening guy by any means. This was one of my proudest moments more than 20 years ago. This was back in 2019. I was in college and there was a really cute guy in one of my classes. A week or 2 in, we had to work together on a small project, and I was pretty excited about the opportunity to get to know him. Though, I got a really bad vibe from him, but nothing specific that I could put my finger on. I lost all attraction to him and knew that I should keep my distance. He approached me a couple times after the project, but I made sure to be pretty cool/distant, though still polite. A month or 2 later, same semester, our professor, Mr. Baldwin, announced that the guy had been arrested for murdering a girl he had been dating, another student in our college. And apparently, it was an extremely brutal murder. He gave us the number of the detective investigating the case in case we had any info to share. I had passed Amy Bishop, UAH biology professor, on the 3rd floor on her way to the faculty meeting where she executed 3 of our professors. She had always seemed weird and gave me chills. I was on my way out of the building, collected my things on the 1st floor from my previous lecture, and drove home to my apartment. I missed several calls on the short drive. Having missed so many, the first I returned was to my mom, who was hysterical. She just kept saying, "You're alive? You're alive?" I was bemused by what she meant. I said, "Should I not be?" And that's when I learned people had been trying to check on my location due to the shooting happening. Edit. I suppose it didn't save me, as I was not a faculty member, but it's the first thing that came to mind. It was extremely surreal to get home and realize so many people suspected I was dead. When I was a teenager, I was king of leaving a party early that eventually got out of hand. It wasn't because of any premonition or anything, it was just because I was tired. It kind of became a joke. Uh-oh, words just left. We better get out of here before the police show up. And it was just like, no, I just have wrestling practice in the morning. Very recently, there was a stabbing next to my work, and I was about to head to the store where the stabbing happened. Something told me not to, and we found out it was a random stabbing, so it really could have been me. Also, when I went to the Boston Marathon, the year the bombing happened, I was on my way towards the finish line. It was the first time we would have watched from there. My mom and I kept getting distracted on the way, and good thing we did, because we were close and we could see the tents they were setting up for emergencies and saw people freaking out. we realized how lucky we were. A few years ago, I was looking for a desk and found a guy who was selling a decent looking one on Craigslist. Agreed to meet him to buy it. Got to the address he gave me, and it was an empty storefront in a fairly bad neighborhood, with news coverings up all the windows. Noped right the fuck out of there and went home. 6 years ago, I had a photography internship at a newspaper and borrowed my family's camera for it. It was during the monsoons, so one night while riding my motorbike, I decided to stop halfway on my way home to see if I could catch some lightning. I stay far from the city, and I just happened to stop in the middle of nowhere with no streetlights or anything. 3 men on a motorbike passed me. Yes, 3 on 1. I don't take notice until I saw them making a U-turn and pull up where I was. They casually asked me what time it was, which I tell them. This is when I get the feeling that something was off, but I kept my cool. They said thanks, took a U-turn, and seemingly went on their way. I hung the camera on my neck, got on my bike, and made my way back home. It didn't take long until I noticed headlights behind me. They circled back again. Damn. They rode right next to me and began trying to kick me off the road. Somehow, I was not fearful as I began kicking back as well. Out of nowhere, I decided to brake. Was not a great choice as I fell off my bike. 2 of them got off and ran towards me, but I was able to get back on before they got to me. One of them grabbed my jacket, but I was already accelerating. The guy on the bike tried to chase me for a bit, but then I pulled a fake out again and braked. He thought I was taking a U-turn, but didn't. His mates were still running on foot, so he either had to chase me alone or go back for his mates. He chose the later. I got away. Camera was safe, even though I fell. Not a feeling, but dumb luck. I had a friend in high school who lived in a closed hotel with a bar. Friday night, big party. I go with a new girlfriend. Friends want to hear a new cassette I got that's in my car. I go to get it and every cop in town is out there. Now I worked at the only dry cleaner in town and knew and was friendly with everyone. They say I shouldn't go back in. I asked if I could get my girlfriend. They said yes. As I was walking in, the captain says, "Tell my daughter to go out back." I got my girl and left. Heard later, 5 minutes after I left, cops went in. This is one of those strange events, and I just put it down to pure luck more than anything else. A few of my friends were leaving a house party one night. This was ages ago, when I was in my early 20s, and we were all on the road just having fun. Some of us were inebriated, and some of us were just high on life. I suddenly got an urge to get off the middle of the road. This is a narrowish 1-lane side road, for apparently no reason. I, male, about 220 pounds at 5'8", physically pushed 3 girls off the road with my arms spread and got to the grass bank on the side of the road. The girls were just about to start complaining about me manhandling them when an idiot teenage driver sped past us in a decked out cheap sports car. We would have all been mowed down if I didn't push everyone off the road. I wish the story ended there. Not even 5 minutes after he went past us, the driver of that car had swerved to avoid a stray dog on the road and had crashed at around 80 miles an hour into a stone wall. He was apparently 15. The minimum driving age in my country is 18, and was the son of a millionaire. When I was 14 or 15, we had a class trip to a well-known beach a couple of states away for a long weekend. One night, I was walking with 3 other girls down the main part of the city, and a man approached us, asked us if we liked tattoos. We all said yes, and that we would love to get one, but we weren't old enough. He said, "Oh, we won't worry about that. My guy do tats for anybody, as long as you don't tell on us," and dropped a wink. That's when I started feeling a little leery. He led us down an alley to a little hole in the wall place with a big metal door. When he opened the door, there were about 5 guys in there with no light except for a little red light. My whole being said, "Get the fuck out now." I screamed run, and I ran until I got back to the hotel. I'm ashamed I never even looked for the other girls until the next day. A few days later, our class was shown a newspaper article that showed the guy that approached us, along with several other men. They were arrested in connection with a sex trafficking ring. Our 14 to 15-year-old selves were almost trafficked.